This is the fifth video in a series that I'm teaching on how Jesus was responsible for the emancipation of slaves historically throughout the world, because Jesus is in charge. His burden, it's his ministry to restore all things, according to Acts chapter 3, verse 19. And so all of history is moving towards making the world a place that is like God wanted it to be at the beginning. And Jesus is in charge of this. So there's no place for slavery in that. Slavery is entirely Satan's idea and man's going along with the enemy in this and creating slavery. So how did we get free of slavery being a normal, expected part of everyday life in all the nations all around the world? That's what this series is about. There's something in all of us that longs for freedom. It's like love and justice. Every person feels like we should have freedom, we should have love, and we should have justice. And yet, the search for it has been troublesome and disappointing at best. I love the film Spartacus. Back in 1960, Kirk Douglas, playing the slave revolt against Rome, ancient Rome, and just carrying the plot through until it comes to the end. The only problem with that film is that the wrong guy won at the end. So Marcus Licinius Crassus, the Roman general, just utterly stamps out the slave revolt, kills Spartacus, and the whole thing ends up in a complete failure. And if you study slave revolts, that's kind of what they all end up with, failure. There was a slave revolt here in the United States. I lived right near where it had happened back in 1800, Gabriel's Rebellion on the north side of Richmond, Virginia. And Gabriel was a very, very gifted slave who managed to figure out how to get all the slaves of many, many plantations throughout the area to work together and plan together this slave rebellion. And their goal was to kill all the white people except Methodists, Quakers, and Frenchmen. And everybody else was to get the axe. And the only thing that hindered them was that on the very night when this rebellion was to take place and everybody was ready, but right at that time, the storm of the century happened right then. And on top of that, with the streams all flooding and the slaves couldn't get to where they were supposed to rendezvous, but then also one of the slaves told his master about the plan, and so the authorities were alerted, and the slave leaders, the rebellion leaders, were rounded up and put to trial. And so there again, we all long for freedom, but here's a slave revolt, and it does not succeed. So maybe we're to learn something about this. Gabriel actually felt at the end of his life that he could see that his rebellion did not have God's blessing on it. And so it seems like at the end he realized that was more important than he had thought. There was another slave rebellion at the same time happening in what we now call Haiti, Toussaint Louverture was a slave, an ex-slave actually. He was a Roman Catholic ex-slave who owned 3 plantations, and then out of that became a military leader of great genius. And so his goal was to get his island country free from the domination of Spain. So it was right at that time that the French Revolution was happening. He switched his allegiance to France, and he managed to create a country that was to be for slaves, and he was proclaimed the leader of that country. Governor for life is the way, or Governor General for life, and he became that in 1801, the very same time that Gabriel's rebellion had just been squashed. But this was a success to the degree that a nation free of slavery, that was for slaves, and slaves would be in the government now, that was created. Well, during that time, France was creating its first republic, and the leader of that republic was Napoleon Bonaparte. So Napoleon did not exactly have the same philosophy that created the republic in the first place. So there was a parley between the French and Toussaint Louverture, who was now the head of this new nation that had been helped by France. Napoleon didn't want a nation that was independent from France and run by slaves. That was not his idea at all. So the French had a parley with Toussaint Louverture, and the result of that was that Toussaint was arrested, and he was carried off to France, and he died in a French prison. Now, those who were in the government after him did succeed in winning independence from France. But you look at Haiti and you ask yourself, is this an example of success? Is this what we look to as a successful slave revolt creating freedom for everybody? And if you know anything about Haiti, you end up asking yourself, if this is an example of success, what would failure look like? So what I've learned over the years, looking at history, slave revolts are not how transformation happens. So then we ask, well, how does transformation happen? Because there are 2 countries that did succeed in getting rid of slavery and actually freeing slaves to enjoy liberation, freedom, emancipation. It was rough going at first, but we do have success. There are success stories, and the main ones, really the only ones, the first ones, are Britain and the United States of America. And these are the 2 countries that did manage to get rid of abolish slavery and free slaves. And other countries, sometimes willingly, sometimes not so willingly, but eventually that sort of plague of righteousness spread to other countries as well. And so what is the reason for success in transformation from slavery into emancipation? How did it happen? We might ask ourselves. And so I just want to say that from my study, true transformation happens in a 3 or 4 step process. One is that those two countries happen to have been the two countries who were experiencing revival tides leading to a great awakening. So is it coincidence that the two nations that experienced successful transformation were also the two nations, even though they were at war with each other, but they were two nations that were on parallel tracks with revival tides leading to a great awakening? So here's my take on how they succeeded. First of all, there was massive prayer on the part of Christians. This prayer was sparked by the memory of the great awakening that had come before in those two nations. So there were people that remembered that. They said to their generation, we need to pray for this again because it's important for us to have God's presence and God's wisdom coming into our nation. So that's what they were praying for. Then step 2, God honored the prayers and came and became present and downloaded his wisdom once again, the higher wisdom of God, so that the church was able to hear from God in a fresh, new, vibrant way. And then the third thing, out of that came leaders, Christian leaders, who were getting a download of destiny. In other words, Jesus was committing kingdom destinies to key leaders and telling them what he wanted them to do. And once you get a destiny from God, it's really hard to get rid of. And, it's like it's burning in you. It's fire in your bones. You can't get rid of it, even if you wanted to, but it becomes you. And your destiny is all bound up in doing something before you die. And that's the way it was with certain people out of the great revival of those days, both in Britain and in the United States of America. So, massive Christian prayer, a revival of God's presence in the region, in the country, in the cities, and so forth, a downloading of destinies, and finally a great awakening that changes the whole way things are operating in the country. That's the way transformation happens. And that's the way it can happen with us today. But we're going to look in the next few videos, who were the people that got a download of destiny from God? And it's going to be an exciting journey to follow these people through their lives.